This video teaches you all about radars, a new Luma hunting method introduced in the most recent Kitsoa update in Temtem. I'll be going over what radars are, what you'll need, and how to get the most out of them. They're good for more than just Luma hunting. I'm Millars, and I'm an avid Luma hunter who has made guides on traditional Luma hunting in the past. I've also successfully gotten a Luma from a radar. I've completed 7 radars so far, and I've broken 2 others. Oops. I have tips on how to avoid that now. If you find this video helpful, consider giving it a thumbs up. It really helps. If you want more Temtem guides and other fun Temtem content, subscribe and hit the bell icon. Now let's get into it. First off, what are radars? Radars are a new item that allow you to hunt for Lumas with greatly increased odds, with a limit. Radars allow you to chain encounters of the same Temtem evolutionary line. Once used, radars will allow you to see Temtem from a specific evolutionary line in the overworld. Run into the Temtem in the overworld to encounter them. At 50 encounters, the minimum SV value of each individual stat for a radar Temtem will be 10. At 100 encounters, the minimum SV value increases to 20. At 200 encounters, the Luma chances for subsequent radar Temtem encounters increases to 5 times the normal Luma rate. At 300 encounters, that Luma rate leaps up to 10 times the normal Luma rate. Here's the catch though. After 400 radar encounters, the radar breaks and cannot be used again. The radar will break before 400 encounters if you catch or kill a Temtem that is not of the same evolutionary line. The radar will also break if you run from a radar encounter. If the radar is under 50 encounters, it will reset instead of breaking, though I wouldn't test it just in case. Radars also break after the weekly reset on Monday at 3 AM EST, so if you haven't used your radar by Sunday, I would sell it instead. You can sell it to shops for 1,250 Pansuns. You can't trade them between players though. To preserve the radar's chain, you can only knock out or catch Temtem from the same evolutionary line as the radar. Only radar encounter Temtem count towards increasing the chain, though knocking out Temtem from the same evolutionary line that were not radar encountered does not break the radar. You can tell if the wild Temtem you encountered was from a radar since the blurb at the beginning of the encounter is different for radar encountered Temtem. If you encounter a Temtem that is not part of the evolutionary line that your radar specifies, run! Radar encounters only have the radar specified Temtem's evolutionary line. To prevent yourself from encountering non-radar Temtems, try using Sense. They reduce normal encounters but do not reduce the frequency of radar Temtem. You can also log out in the middle of a radar too. It'll still be there when you log back in. The odds of you getting a Luma from a radar are about 16.4%. That's about a 1 in 6 chance of getting a Luma. After using 4 radars, your odds of having encountered a Luma is about 50%. After 9 radars, your odds of having encountered a Luma is about 80%. With these odds, radars are the fastest way to get Lumas. If a Temtem is Luma in the overworld, it is guaranteed to be Luma when you encounter it. You might still get a Luma even from a non-Luma radar Temtem in the overworld, since the second Temtem in a double encounter could still be Luma. You can't just refresh the Temtem in the overworld until you see a Luma though. Radar Temtem are queued, and you will always see the same Temtem spawn again if you despawn them. The only time it is advantageous to spawn them all in at once is when you are at 394 encounters. This is because the maximum amount of radar Temtem that can spawn in the overworld is 6. You can let 6 radar Temtem spawn in, but you won't be able to encounter all of them since some of those Temtem encounters will be double encounters. This allows you to see a few more overworld Temtem than you would otherwise, since once you pass 394, the maximum amount of radar Temtem that can spawn reduces accordingly. The levels of the radar encountered Temtem increases the higher your encounter chain is. At 0 encounters, the level starts at the same level you would normally encounter them in the wild. The levels linearly scale up to the maximum level Temtem, so be prepared to face tougher Temtem as the chain rises. If the target Temtem has evolutions, you will begin to see its evolved form instead of its primary form as the chain rises as well. However, you will never see the 3rd evolution as radar encounters, since 3rd evolution Temtem are never catchable in the wild. The evolution of your target Temtem will appear once the radar Temtem start appearing X amount of levels higher than they are initially encountered at in the wild, with X equaling the number of levels that species takes to evolve. For example, Umishi evolves into a Kama after 14 levels and is encountered naturally at levels 17 and 18 in this pond. Once the radar Temtem hit level 31, they began spawning as Ukama instead of Umishi. Radars are good for more than just Luma hunting. With the high-level Temtem, they're great for completing Freetem. I personally recommend killing the first 200, then catching the last 200 since they will be worth more for Freetem. Now that there's a limit on how many Temtem you can be paid for from Freetem, catching only the higher level Temtem is the more efficient way to go. Since SVs become boosted after 100 encounters, raidars are also a good way to get breeding stock for Perfect Temtem. I have a guide on how to breed Perfect Temtem if you're interested in that, in the iCard above and in the description below. You can also level up Temtem or even TV train them while using raidars. I started with this freshly hatched Tattoo at level 1 and put a Coward's Cloak on it while doing a Genki raidar. The Tattoo ended up with 500 attack TVs at level 40. You might get even more levels if the radar Temtem you start with starts at a higher level. You obtain raidars by rematching the Dojo Masters each week. You can win a maximum of 3 raidars per week, and the type of radar you received is randomly drawn from a pool of Temtem with the types that correspond to the Dojo Master. Tihani is an exception, as she specializes in wind, water, nature, and fire, but only gives out nature and fire raidars. Raidars of Temtem with lower encounter rates are rarer than raidars of common Temtem. I go more into detail on the Dojo Master rematches, what types each Dojo Master corresponds to, and how to beat them in my previous video. Check it out in the iCard above and in the description below. Now that you know what raidars are, let's get into how to use them. You'll want to use your raidars wherever you can naturally encounter that Temtem with a specific evolutionary line in the wild. For example, if you have a Kaku radar, use it in a patch of grass that it naturally spawns in and you will begin to see Kaku and eventually Saku in the overworld. The frequency at which overworld radar Temtem spawns is directly proportional to the encounter rate in the area. Use the radar in the place where the Temtem has the highest encounter rate so they spawn as fast as possible. Make sure you check out where their highest encounter rate is on the official Temtem wiki. For frame of reference, my Yamushi radar took me about 3 hours to complete, and I killed the majority of the radar Temtem. My Kini radar, on the other hand, took me over 20 hours. Don't worry though. They've since changed how 5% encounter rate radars work. It should now take around 10 hours to complete a 5% encounter rate radar like a Kinu radar. Note that it doesn't matter where you start the radar. If you start it in the wrong place, just walk to the correct area and you'll be fine. The radar will start blipping when you get to an area where the radar Temtem can spawn. You're free to leave the area where the radar Temtem naturally spawn and return to it at any time. Just avoid catching or killing a non-radar Temtem while you're running around. Super Sense help if you need to leave the area while in the middle of a radar. If you're going to AFK during the radar, it's better to AFK outside of battle rather than in the middle of one, since radar Temtem don't spawn while you're in the middle of battle. However, before you use a radar, you'll want to prepare your Temtem team in advance. A lot of the information I said in my comprehensive Luma guide still applies to radar hunting, but with a few extra things to consider. I still recommend having a Kinu, tank, and cage user on your team for when you do find a Luma. Now, you'll also need to either catch or kill the radar Temtem instead of running away, so the first 2 Temtem in your party should either be Temtem suited towards killing the radar Temtem as fast as possible, or for catching the Temtem as fast as possible. Remember that as the chain increases, the level increases as well, so your team should be able to take down max level Temtem. Having a Kini with Benefactor in one of the first spots in your party and a Temtem with Lure in the other helps sustain your Temtem's health against the higher level enemies. Like I explained in my Luma hunting items and Temtem guide, there are some traits to avoid to have on your team since it will slow you down in your encounters. Now that you have to attack some Temtem, there are even more traits to avoid if you want to finish the radar as fast as possible. These include traits that proc after killing Temtem like Prideful. This also includes combining an item that boosts damage with a trait that boosts damage, as both the item and the trait have to appear before the Temtem dies. Here's a bonus tip on radar hunting. If you're a Luma hunter, you're probably used to running away from Temtem that aren't Luma. I sure am. I highly recommend you unbind your run button once you start a radar, since muscle memory may lead to unfortunate consequences. Many people have accidentally broken their radars. It's more common than you'd think. I recommend taking precautions rather than learning from your own mistakes. I broke my first radar from running away out of habit when I was distracted. I broke my 6th radar by hitting the wrong key. I had bound my inventory to E and run to R. That is not a good idea for radars. I now have my run key bound to a key I need my right hand to press, since I use my left hand to move around with the WASD keys. That's all there is to radars! If you enjoyed this video, consider giving it a thumbs up, leaving a comment telling everyone what raiders you got, and sharing this video with your friends. I also stream on Twitch, so feel free to drop a follow and come chat with us when we're live. I have a Temtem giveaway every Monday with the stream starting at 11 PM EST. Join us and you might win a Perfect Temtem or even a Luma. The stream link is in the description below. If you want more Temtem guides and other Temtem content, subscribe and hit the bell icon, and I'll see you next time!